So Valerann, at an overview, Valerann's vision is to deliver the single biggest improvement in road safety since the seatbelt. Now, this is quite a hefty vision, and we'll talk about how we are executing on that vision, how we're already bringing that into reality. But what this really signifies is Valerann's belief in data and in AI, and how we believe data and AI can transform the world of ITS, the world of road operations, and ultimately road safety. Our mission, to build on that, is to transform large-scale road operators, the organizations, such as the one that everyone here connects to, that are entrusted with building and maintaining and operating the largest infrastructure on Earth, roads. These operators have so much that they're responsible for, and we want to help them. And the way we help them, our mission is to help them move from a process-centric approach to what we call to becoming a data-driven organization. So that when something happens, rather than following a predefined process as to what needs to be done now and what needs to be done now, rather at any given point, operators will have data available to make the best decision for that moment based on trusted data, so that the overall operations can become much more efficient, and as a result, lead to the improvement that we talked about above. Now, we do this using AI, and we do this because we believe that at the center of this transition from being process-centric to data-driven lies trust. Trust in data. And we'll talk about trust in data and why there's no trust today and how we traverse the trust gap. And what our value proposition, what we bring to the table, is the ability to trust the data you already have. The ability to action the data you already have at scale continuously as the data comes in, to immediately know what you can trust, what you can't trust, what you can action, what you shouldn't action, so that you can respond or even prevent much more effectively. And the way we do that is through our AI platform that we'll share today, that takes billions of data points in real time and helps validate what is true, not true, what is interesting and uninteresting, contextualize that, prioritize it, so you know when something happens, what are the things that you need to be aware of and what you should do about them. So that way, your people are able to focus on the things they do best, which is to make complex decisions of how to handle often life or death matters. So this is Valerann, from 30,000 feet. The context for this is the huge amount of data that our roads are seeing. Just single highway that Valerann manages collects as many as 60 million data points every single day. We recently did a trial with a European operator. Results are going to become public soon, where over the course of 3 months, we collected 584,000 incident alerts from different sources. 584,000 incident alerts from cameras, from Waze, from social media, from navigation apps, from radars, from connected vehicles, from phone calls, etc. Now, this massive information is coming in to our control centers. And in our control centers, we have 3, 5, if you're a very big operator, 10 people. You have 10 people, and you're getting 60 million data points every single day. And this tension between the amount of data we have and the people that we have to deal with it cause a rift between the data available and the tools we use. I'm assuming the vast majority of the people here would have been in a control center. You would have been in these big rooms with like a big wall with lots of TV screens. And in front of that wall, you have probably 4 or 10 or 5, whatever people sitting in front of the desk. Each desk has 2 or 3 screens. A lot is going on. A lot of technology, a lot of investment. And those people whose job is to save lives, a job they take very seriously, most often, and from every time in our experience, detect accidents primarily through phone calls coming into the control center, manually reviewing CCTV, looking camera by camera by camera, and sending a patrol to drive to a location to see whether something has happened. So we're talking about all these future technologies, connected vehicles, navigation apps, social media. We're talking about all these data sources that theoretically can transform how we operate our roads, but we use very manual processes, phone calls, manually looking at cameras, sending patrol. And this tension between the data available and the processes used is what we call the trust gap. The data that is shown is not trusted, and so it is not used. And if anyone here has ever tried to use, for example, Waze, or if anyone here has tried to automate any type of process based on machine vision, you will know that because you get so many false positives from all these data sources, your operators end up not using them. They don't use them because they take their job too seriously to spend precious minutes on a data source that is not adding value all the time. And if we cannot traverse that challenge, we're never going to be using data, and we're never going to be enjoying the massive benefits that this data holds. Because ultimately, too much data is just noise if you don't know how to do it. And this is where we come to our mission, which is to transform large-scale operators from being process-centric like they are today to data-driven. And the way we do that is we build upon 3 pillars. Building trust in data, so that when you see something, you trust it. Once you trust it, we strive to empower your response so that you are as effective, as targeted, and as relevant to the issue at hand so that you manage, mitigate, and clear it as fast as possible. And then lastly, continuously improve. How do we use the data that you're generating by interacting with data to make sure you're continuously getting better and better results? So these are the 3 pillars that help the process of becoming more and more data-driven. We'll talk about how the tech works, and then I'll show the system in play. So we talked about the 3 pillars: creating trust in data, empowering response, and helping continuously improve. When we say creating trust in data, what we mean is creating a single source of truth, and we'll see live examples of this in a moment. Creating a single source of truth that tells you what is happening on the road right now. And the way that works is by validating events by detecting their digital footprints. Let's give an example. If you have an accident, very few data sources report accident. If you have an accident and you have a radar will detect a stopped vehicle. If you have an accident, you have a camera might detect pedestrians on the road. If you have an accident and you have a loop, it might detect unexpected congestion. If you have Waze, it might tell you there's a hazard on the road or an incident. Maybe it'll tell you there's an accident, maybe not. But each one of these alerts is a digital footprint of the accident that happened. And the challenge we have is that every event on the road has dozens of digital footprints. Every stopped vehicle, every congestion, every accident, every wrong way driver, every pedestrian on the road has dozens of digital footprints. And the data sources that we work with, connected vehicles, cameras, navigation apps, etc., they capture these digital footprints and they share it with you. And that means that your operators are now seeing for every true event, they're seeing 20 different alerts. No wonder they can't go through all of them. What our system does is fuses them together and say, hey, this congestion and this stopped vehicle and this pedestrian on the road, they're all the same event. And that event is happening here, and that event is very high risk and maybe even an accident. Once you connect it in that way, you do two things. You massively reduce the noise because you've taken all of these duplicate digital footprints and put them into one alert. But two, you've contextualized the alert to allow you to prioritize what's going on. How risky is the area? How much traffic is there? What's the visibility like? And that allows you to know, to get a list of these are the true events that are happening, and this is their order of priority. Once you have that, you can start responding. And this is where the system helps expedite the response. First, based on what we know, it can suggest the most appropriate response. If you want, it can even automate part of it. So, for example, simple automations can be connect me to my nearest camera, point the camera in the right direction, tell me what my nearest patrol is. If you trust the system enough, you can start automating more, sending a patrol, changing the VMS if you want. But if you don't want, you can suggest next steps based on this live data so that your operator has a much clearer view of the decision they need to make. So instead of treating them like a data collector that answers phone calls, you now treat your people as decision makers who have all the data in front of them and make the live and most important decisions when it comes to how am I going to respond, what resources I'm going to deploy, and what is needed for me right now to save this life. Now you've responded. And the last thing the system does is improve itself. If we shared an event with you that you responded to, we look at every click that you've done on the system. You took an event, you changed your VMS. This means this event was interesting to you. If you took an event and did nothing, that means the event was uninteresting to you. Over time, the system takes more and more of this input and learns what type of events you find the most interesting. So every day you use the system becomes better for you. And it allows him, and so make sure that you keep on getting the highest priority as like day in, day out. Not only that, it actually sees how different operators in your control center operate and can suggest how you can improve the operation of one by comparing them to another. Hey, we see that Jason takes 12 minutes to resolve an incident, while Sarah takes 9. Maybe Jason and Sarah should talk to one another and see what Jason can be doing better to become more like Sarah in the way he deals with accidents. So that's how the system helps continuously improve. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to share the system itself. So you see the front end of how it works, and I'm going to give you live examples of how Fusion helps make a big difference. Let me stop sharing my screen and go to the system. It's the share button. Okay. So here we have the system lantern by Valerann. And we're going to look at a few roads. We're going to look at roads from Central America, from South America, from the US, and from Europe today as we go through examples. But let's just see how the system looks like so you kind of get a chance to understand how it all falls together. And then we'll look at a few examples of how the system works. So what you see is a screen that might be quite familiar to you. In the middle, you see a map. Let me increase this to make it a bit easier. You see a map. You see a road in this map. One thing that will look probably quite familiar is you see how traffic is flowing. You see how traffic is flowing along different parts of the road. This road specifically now is in Costa Rica. The time there, it's 5:20 in the morning, so traffic is overall flowing. However, you can see that congestion is starting to form in the main routes. Now, we also are connected to all the different data sources. So, we can see on all the cameras, we can have direct access to them. Importantly, what you see here on the right is all the machine vision that is applied to each one of the cameras. So this camera here, for example, has pedestrian detection, cyclist detection, stop vehicles, hazard light, animals, and counting happening on this. And we'll see an example of what that means in a moment. You have, in addition, you are connected to all of the patrol vehicles. This is very important when we later on talk about how response happens, and as well as data sources to do with weather. So at any point, what is the weather like along the road. So this is quite a simple view of the road. This will be very familiar to a lot of you. One thing that the system does, except looking at live traffic flow, we also look at live risk levels. So the system takes 10 years of historical accident data, applies machine learning to it, and then in real time determines areas that are of highest risk. And for those of you who can tell, the legend here is from bright blue, like the one you see over here, to darker blues and darker purples is the areas with the highest risk. And if we have an area of relatively high risk, although it's not very high risk, we can actually go to the location information, look at risk factors, and it tells you what is driving the risk in this area. So in this area, for example, we can tell what it's telling you is that you have pretty bad visibility due to the location of the sun, and you're near dangerous infrastructure like bridge and a toll road. So, and a toll plaza. So this is useful information because you don't just know that it's high risk. By breaking it down into the variables of the risk, you can actually start looking, what can I do? What can I do to try and help this risk and try and help reduce this risk? So we know the issue is to do with visibility and dangerous infrastructure. So if you wanted to, you could change the VMS upstream to tell them, hey, bridge and toll gantry coming ahead, just so drivers are more aware of it as they come down. And by reducing a specific element in the risk, you reduce the overall risk of an accident. Now, when an event happens, it comes in this list here on the left. So we have here like a pedestrian on the road that just appeared. It will tell you what data sources it came from. In this case, it came from a camera. It shows you like the traffic levels at the time. We'll see later how that is important, as well as a replay of the event itself and the live video stream. And that's kind of like how you start seeing events happening. But let's look at more complex events and how they start appearing and why it matters so much to do fusion. So here's an example of this. One is going to be an example from a road in Lima. So what you have here is you have a stop vehicle detection. Okay, this is a stop vehicle detection. This is also detected by a camera. Now, what I want you to notice is we'll see the stop vehicle in a moment, but I'll go to over here. Now, what you're going to see is, first of all, you see there's a lot of stop vehicles here. The stop vehicles here, the stop vehicles here. None of these vehicles are the vehicles that were actually detected, because this area here is a known area. This area here is basically a parking space. So the operator doesn't care. So that's not the alert. If I go a bit, however, what you see here, the alert itself is triggered by this car. by this car here. This is what was ultimately detected. And it is this thing that, and it is the reason that this was the one detected, not the others, is because we know that these areas and these areas are not interesting. And as your road becomes more and more busy, this type of separation becomes critical. Now, but this is only one alert. What happens when you have many alerts? Well, let's look at how an accident can actually look like. So I'm going to show you an accident now. There's going to be a video of an accident. No one was ultimately hurt in the accident, but you do see a car rolling. So just as an FYI for anyone who might find that sensitive. But we talked about earlier the digital footprints of an accident. So let's say, for example, let's look at the digital footprints of this incident. Okay, I'm going to go to the history of this incident and to the detections. Okay. What we saw here was there was a stopped vehicle. A minute later, there's a pedestrian on the road alerted from a minute later, there was congestion from Waze. Sorry, 3 minutes later, there was congestion from Waze. And then there was congestion from another data source here. And then there's another pedestrian on the road about 4 minutes later, again from a camera, and another stopped vehicle. So all in all, there's about 10 different alerts here. Now, if you just got 10 different alerts, you might say, I'm not going to look at it. None of these are actually interesting because pedestrians, I don't care about. Stopped vehicles, who cares? But let's look at the event. Okay. So, and see how the event actually happened. So what happened is that this car over here rolled over and out of the camera. So this is something that you would have missed with the moment. If you were not looking at the camera for a moment, you'd never know this happened. Okay, immediately a car stops. You get a stop vehicle detection. You might get 30, 40, 50 of these a day, so you might not care. You get a pedestrian on the road coming up, another detection. Again, pedestrian on the road. If you have a sidewalk next to your road, you might get 100 of these a day. No one cares. This is causing congestion. Once again, how many times do you get congestion per day? If you get just a congestion alert into your control center, who cares? It's just congestion. The point is that when these three come together in quick succession, that is when they become super relevant. And that's why fusing these events, fusing these digital footprints is critical. Because you would have never seen, like the chances of you actually seeing this car flip over, that took a second. You blink and it's over. You have 200 cameras. You're not going to see that. It is the digital footprints you need to see, and they're only relevant as indicators if you can put them together. Now, we had another example just 4 days ago on a different road. We had 3 indicators. I'm not going to share this one, but we had 3 indicators. We had an incident alert. We had from Waze. We had a hazard on the road alert a few minutes later, which seems strange. And then in this other side of the road, we saw congestion, but in the same location. We put all these things together, and it was enough to tell the operator, hey, this is there's something here that is abnormal. You should go check it out. They sent a patrol over to look. It was next to a bridge. A pedestrian had climbed on the bridge and was planning to commit suicide. And all these alerts from Waze that they were getting were people trying to say something is going on here. Be careful. And the congestion was people slowing down to look at what's going on. Only because we were able to put these things together and not separate the alerts did it become powerful enough to actually move the operator to action to send a patrol over, and they were able to convince the person not to jump and save their life. So when you talk about the importance of fusion, it's the importance of reducing noise, because if you get, instead of 1 alert, like you see here, you got 10 alerts. You might ignore all of them because there's too much to deal with. but it's also creating certainty. Because once you see all these, saying, hey, all of these are happening at the same time, in the same place, they're all consistent, you start saying, okay, I actually need to do something about this. And then your operators can move into action. So back to the presentation. Now, so what is the impact of this? What is the impact of detecting earlier? You saw what happened before. There was a crash. Within 30 seconds, you had your first digital footprint. Okay? In the case of the attempt suicide, something that you would not have detected at all till it was too late. So what is the impact of knowing earlier and having the certainty to respond sooner? Well, it's quite drastic. So our roads have consistently seen a 10 to 15% reduction in accidents with injuries and fatalities. As a matter of fact, one of our roads in Chile recently went on a conference, on a panel, and said that they reduced their injuries and fatalities, not accidents, their injuries and fatalities by 43% since using Lantern. And that's why we say the biggest single improvement since the seatbelt. Now, making these improvements doesn't only result in saving lives, which is so crucial, but it also helps our operations and our roads indirectly. By doing these operations better, we have seen a reduction in journey times because you have less disruption. You're mitigating, you're preventing incidents from happening, you're mitigating their deterioration. And so they impact traffic less. So on average, you have more capacity on your road. If you're a toll road, that means you're making more money. If you're a government road, that means you need to build less roads. Also, you're saving on other systems. And so you're actually creating ROI by saving all these lives before even counting the massive societal benefit of such drastic changes. Because of this impact, Lantern today is used by roads worldwide, in the US, in South and Latin America, and Europe. In each and every road, we're seeing the same transformational impact. It starts by the trust in data. Once they trust data, it improves the operations. It makes detections faster, response more relevant. This helps prevention and reduction in deterioration of incidents. And this, again, time and time again, leads to big improvements in safety, in traffic flow, whilst also giving savings to the operator themselves. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now. We'll also be in Istanbul in the conference very soon in IRF. If I had to leave you though with one thought, is that using data is like putting money in a bank. It saves with interest. The more you use data, the better you become, the more value you can get out of it, the better it becomes. So just like with savings, if you start saving now, you'd be better in a year. If you saved 10 years ago, you'd be better now. If you're not using all the data sources you have, start using them. Start working with them. Start seeing, how do you use your cameras better? How do you get more value out of Waze? How do you get more value out of your account? Start learning that, because as you deal with data, you will understand it better. You'll get more value out of it. We're obviously very happy to help anyone where that's relevant for. However, most important is that our industry makes data-driven decisions the standard of how we operate our roads, and start moving away from process-centric methods that are super valuable but can be improved on. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for this great presentation. Before we get to questions, tekrar hatırlatmak gerekirse, siz de IRF Dünya Kongresi'ne katılıyorsanız bizi 169 numaralı stand'te ziyaret edebilirsiniz. Aslında bir değil, iki ödüle aday gösterildik. Road Safety Award ve Traffic Management ITS Award. Aynı zamanda iki sunumumuz da olacak. Onlara da katılmanızı bekleriz. I think we have some questions in the chat, um, mostly about the algorithm. So how does the data fusion algorithm work? And what's the logic behind the data fusion? Is there a prioritization process of alerts?
Yeah. And well, let me show you. Let me go through how it works. I'll share two more slides for this. And let me share my screen again. Okay. So imagine you have a road, right? You have all these different assets. You have your bridges, your tunnels, your toll gantries if you're a toll road. Now you start getting different data sources, right? So the first data source can be floating data. Floating data might show you that there's roadworks over here and a hazard on the road. And then the next one, you have machine vision. Machine vision might show that there's a pedestrian here and a couple of stop vehicles here. The gray ones are additional alerts that you might not see. Then you have data coming about weather. So you have rain over here, you have fog over here, you have ice over here. And you have the traffic coming from different sources, slowing speed here and a traffic jam over here. And lastly, you have risk. So how risky an area is based on your live conditions and your historical data. What the system basically does is based on theme, time, location, and past user behavior. I'll get into that in a moment. It kind of this helps determine what is part of the same event and what are different events. So in this case, and then based on that, it gives you the insight of what's happening now and what's the suggested action. So here, it'll say, hey, over here, this is roadworks. Okay, based on what we can tell here, we have a roadwork alert from Waze. Machine vision is saying that there's pedestrian on the roads. That's consistent from what we know about the roadworks. The slow speeds are expected. We expected to see them. Like we're not surprised. And then basically, so we're assessing it's a roadwork, so you don't need any action. Here, on the other hand, like we're saying there's a hazard on the road and two stop vehicles. There's a traffic jam we didn't expect, and it's an area of high risk. Saying these things together, we determine are a major accident. I think there's two parts to this, right? The first part is lobbying everything together and saying all this is one event. That's actually the most important part. And then there's the automatic assessment of what we believe it is. The reason this is more important is because think about what the operator sees, right? If you did not have the Fusion engine here, then the operator would see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and maybe these gray ones as well, maybe 20 different alerts. What the system does, it tells you, hey, these alerts are not interesting to you. And these 6 alerts and these 7 alerts, they're all one in one event. So suddenly the operator only has 2 events. And now they can determine what they want to do about it. They have much better information. So what you're doing really is you're bringing all the information into one place for the operator to make a decision. That's really the most important thing. Now, then you start making judgments to help that. But now you're just kind of like helping them around the edges. This is where you've really added value. Now let's look at how that works, though, how this kind of bringing together works. And what you see here, this is like an example, actually. I wonder if I can actually give you even one with better numbers that we had from a more recent study. Let me, I'll do that because we actually just did for we just did this exact piece of work for a client that is very, very useful. And I cannot find it now, so we will stay here. Okay. So I'll try to remember the exact numbers and kind of show them so you see the impact. Let's say you start with the raw alerts coming in, right? So the raw alerts, we talked about 60 million data points. We talked about the client that we worked with recently. They had 584,000 alerts that came into the system. Okay. Those 584,000 alerts had a noise ratio of 99.7%. That means that 0.3% of those alerts were unique, interesting events. Okay. So in order to gain value, you'd have to go through 300 events for every one thing that you'd respond to. The first thing you do is deduplication. What is deduplication? Is, let's say, machine vision detects a stopped vehicle, and 30 seconds later in the same location detects a stopped vehicle because of how the algorithm works. Those are the that's the same stop vehicle. So those two things are one. If Waze gives you, if 5 people in the same location in Waze have said stop vehicle, accident, major accident, etc., at the same location, same time, that's the same event. So you deduplicate it, it's same source, same type deduplication. Then the next thing is you have, and now when we've done that, we took the 584,000, we reduced that to 30,000 with about 3% quality, so 97% noise. So 1 in 30 alerts now are good. The next thing down is cross-source, cross-type, which means that not only are we saying a stop vehicle from Waze and a stop vehicle from machine vision are in the same location, same time, at the same event, that's done on geography and time. We're actually saying that the same let's say the stop vehicle from the camera and the incident from Waze at the same location at the same time, they're the same event. Now, this is done through both through like learning. Historically, this is like the machine learning part that kind of sees different events, and we know from that, oh, hey, these events have been this in the past. But also through what we call fuzzy logic, which we can get into if we want to, which is different events have a spectrum of what they can be, and it determines on a spectrum what an event is likely to be. But the most important part is it's telling you that these two things are the same thing. Now, then there is the enrichment part, which says, so the stop vehicle and the instant alert are the same event, but this traffic jam that was caused by this event, that's context to the event. It is part of the same event. It is not a different event. And so you fuse that together. Now, when we do these steps, we go down from 584,000 alerts to 30,000 alerts or 32,000 alerts to 21,000 alerts. Ultimately, we got to 1,400 alerts with a 71% accuracy. So now, importantly, what's super crucial about this is not only are you getting a high amount, but we increase the amount of alerts that the road operator knew about by 40%. So suddenly there's 40% more alerts that the operator wanted to do something about that they didn't know about before, like an oil spill that we helped them discover, or an accident that they didn't know about, like a bumper-to-bumper accident they didn't know about that we helped them know about. But also, equally importantly, we decreased their detection time by an average of 9.5 minutes. So that means that they are responding to accidents sooner. They're preventing them from getting worse. They're preventing the impact on traffic. So this is how it works, and why it helps reduce the amount of alerts you get whilst maintaining high quality alerts. I see another question here, which is, does the system use only camera, and how they achieve environmental effects on the camera? So here, so first of all, no, we use a lot of data sources. We use cameras, we use radars, we use connected vehicles. We use navigation apps like Waze, Google Maps, Here, TomTom. We use social media. We use weather. We use the location of your patrol. We use every single data source that is available to you, we connect to. And the reason for that is exactly your question. When you say, how do we achieve environmental effects on the camera? That is the exact reason why we use Fusion, because every data source has different advantages and disadvantages. Cameras are amazing at the location that they are at in the right conditions. Like, they're amazing in the right conditions, but in the wrong conditions, then they're useless. Now we do try and help with that. So let me give you an example here. So for example, cameras are used to being not very good at night. So we developed an algorithm that instead of detecting stopped vehicles or accidents at night, we detect hazard lights. So this you have here a hazard light detection. And the way that looks like is if I go here, it detects these blinkers, and that's how we know an event happens. If I go here, it kind of symbolizes that this is the area where you have the blinking lights, and that's how you know that you have an event on your road. So we do try to see how can we use different elements of the camera to become better, but more importantly, it's what we try to do is we try to understand what data sources are useful in what ways. And so if I was to share this slide. So this is a very simple matrix of the advantages and disadvantages of different data sources. So for example, machine vision is very good at the percentage of vehicles it captures that count, the richness of the data, you get a lot of detail, and the accuracy. If machine vision tells you there's a stopped vehicle there, it's most likely to have stopped vehicles. However, the coverage is not very good. You only have a camera where you have a camera. And the robustness is not very good. If suddenly it starts raining really heavy, you're not going to be able to use it so well. On the other hand, let's say connected vehicles, social media, navigation apps, etc., then their coverage is very good. You have your whole road cover. You don't have all the vehicles. The richness is okay. You get quite a bit of detail, not like a lot, not as much as machine vision, but more than others. Importantly, the robustness is super high. Waze is going to work come rain or come shine. And these two things together actually really help. And we have done a lot of analysis into how they improve on the latency and the accuracy of one another. On the other hand, IoT sensors, loops and radars, they're very good at getting every single vehicle. Their accuracy is super high, but their coverage and their richness is very low. You're just getting counted. The trick is how do we connect them all together to get the best of all worlds whilst reducing the negative or the discounts of each one. And that's really what Fusion is about.
If there are any more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Başka sorunuz varsa. So I'll just add our email here as well, if anyone would like to reach out to us.
So someone asked what machine learning, deep learning algorithms are used in our AI solution. I'm not sure if you're asking here around are we using a random forest or another type of deep learning algorithm? I'm happy to go into that in more detail on a more technical call. I think let me talk about where we use our machine learning and like specifically, and then from there we can talk about the how if you want in a different call. But we use our machine learning in a few different places. One is we look at how users use the system. So you saw the system before, you saw an instant when a user kind of If I go back to an instant here, I can, like when an instant happens, like if there's a stop vehicle, I can then decide that I want to start taking action. I can like assign it to a patrol. I can start sharing it to different data sources. I can start logging if I want changing the VMS, etc. So if I start taking action, then the system logs that as this is important, this is interesting, and we learn that. And then the next time we're more likely to give it to you. So that's one place where we use it. The second place is around we look at your historically what has happened on your road, and based that we make it more likely to raise things that like more likely that you will see things that that even before the system was used, like if areas of like higher accident, we determine, hey, we in real time apply machine learning to say this area has a higher risk of accident right now, so you should, and maybe you should consider doing something about it, because we determine that this area is higher likelihood for accident. Okay. Then the last place where we use machine learning is to look at, okay, I'll stop sharing my screen so I won't distract, is we look at how all roads work around traffic flow and around both traffic flow and around events. And we use learnings from one road to another road. So we, for example, we use it to predict how traffic is going to flow on all roads, how events are going to determine how they're going to develop in all roads, what is traffic flow expected to be like, and how is that different from what it actually is like as part of our determinant of the state of the normal. So these are the three places where we use our machine learning. If you want to get into the how, we can definitely do that, but maybe on a different call.
Yeah, maybe we can answer one more question. How does the system get the data from different types of sensors, which have different protocol and logic?
Yeah. Well, we work with the operators, so it really depends on the systems they have. Our commitment is to getting the data. So we start with the open source. We have relationships with all the open source floating data sources, so we can help you get the data source you need for your specific like types of for your specific use cases. But we also find we will work with you to get the data. So the alert you just saw, for example, that was a machine vision that we applied on an analog PTZ camera. So we connect a PTZ camera, and it was analog, and we applied our machine vision to it. So by doing that, we're basically showcasing that we can really, whatever data source you have, we'll find a way. We connect to your loops, we connect to your, if you need us to your VMS. Our team, that's part of the value add. We'll work with you, we'll connect. If you have suppliers, we'll work with them. If you have like your own team, we'll work with them and we'll make it happen. And then actually a big part of the value is that at the end of all of this, you're going to have access to a database that has all your data sources that are now all organized in a familiar logic that you can start interacting with in a unified way in a single data lake, as opposed to different databases for different data sources in different locations.
Okay. Yeah. So I just left our email in the chat. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop us an email. Otherwise, I think we're on time. Yeah, we would like to thank everyone who enabled this webinar. ITS Türkiye takımına, Esma ve Coşku Hanım'a teşekkür ederiz. Katılımcılara da çok teşekkür ediyoruz. And is there one more? Yeah, okay. And we hope to see you all in Istanbul. If you're there, feel free to visit us and reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Herkese çok teşekkür ederiz katıldığınız için.